Hey, welcome back, Ram fans. I have Scott Richmond on board today. How you doing, Scott? What's going on?
Doing great on the weekend, Mark. How are you?
Pretty good, man. We're recording this on Sunday actually, and man, it's a beautiful day outside. One of the nicest days we've had this year. Pretty
Yeah,
splendid
great.
outside. So the reason, I invited you on is I've been getting wrapped up in the mock drafts and all that, and because that's a lot of fun. And then I realized all heck's about to break loose on the free agency front here. The new the new league year about to start. And I said, we better start looking at these free agents and which ones make sense for us, for the Rams, which ones don't. So I thought what we'd talk about is the first thing we'll talk about is the Rams free agents and which ones. This is more or less your show, Scott. I'll let you take the lead. The ones you think we need to bring back, which ones we're ready to move on for.
hmm
And we'll take it like that. So, do you want me to throw some Ram free agents out at you and you tell me yay or nay? Or how do you want to do this?
Hmm. That's good. Well, how about we start by position groups first?
Okay. Well, let's
How
start
about
with go
offensive
ahead.
line? Offensive
Offensive
line?
line. So
Yes.
really, the one we got to talk about, I assume, is Alaric Jackson and maybe Joseph Noteboom. I think there's how do you feel about it? I guess the default position, everybody assumes we got to bring this guy back. Are you in that
Mhm.
camp?
I think, considering the free agent market, I would say investing in Alaric Jackson for the future would be the best plan going forward.
Yeah, there's not a lot of options out there. Maybe Cam Robinson, and we'll talk about some externals at the end
Mhm.
here. Okay, so keep Alaric Jackson. And what should we talk about the salary cap situation real quickly? How about that?
Yeah, I think as of today, or I should say, as of the last 3 to 4 weeks, the Rams were sitting at around 43 to 44 million of cap space. Um,
Yeah, that's what
since
over. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
since
what
we've
over the
heard
cap is
that,
shown here.
the league has come out and said it's been increased. So I think the 44 could be closer to 48 as of today.
Okay. And we should also consider now this, what I'm showing on the screen here over the cap. By the way, you folks on the podcast, audio only, we'll try to keep you up to speed as best we can. There will be a lot of supporting graphics on the YouTube channel, but I think you can follow along audio only, and we'll do our best to help you out there. So, what this over the cap number isn't reflecting, though, is assumed either Cooper Cup getting traded or released, and that'll
Mhm.
probably add another 7 million or so. I guess it depends on when. I'd
Mhm.
assume they want to. Ideally, they'd like to get that done before the draft. But anything else I'm missing here as far as these numbers go?
No, I think that covers it in general.
And then Stafford, of course, his situation will change the cap number potentially as well. But we could probably roll with 50 million in cap space.
And a general amount, yes, that would be
Okay.
great.
Okay. So back to Alaric Jackson. Alaric Jackson, 26 years old, I think. And
Mhm.
there's mixed opinions on him, but I think the point you're trying to make at the start here off the top is, uh, I don't know if there's really better options out there. And we'll talk about the draft. And we're not going to get into the draft situation
Mhm.
because that will be segue off of what happens in free agency. So you
Mhm.
definitely want to bring Alaric Jackson back. And what about Joseph Noteboom?
Uh, I think I think it's time to let him walk. I think due to performance being closer to being average and number of the injury history, I would say it's time to go younger as far as going with the swing tackle, possibly out of the draft, somebody that's going to be possibly available more and be with some cost savings would be the way to go.
Okay. I think probably 95% of Ram fans will agree with us on that.
Mhm.
Do what it takes. Well, I shouldn't say do what it takes. Hopefully, Alaric Jackson. This is the problem with free agency is, if there was a rumor, it's really just clickbait out there. The Giants are gonna be interested in Alaric Jackson, And some of these teams make outlandish offers, and what are you going to do? You got to make decisions, sensible decisions, salary cap wise. But
Mm-hmm.
we would hope that the Rams can come to a reasonable agreement with Alaric Jackson and let Joseph Noteboom walk. I think that's probably all that's worth talking about along the offensive line, right?
Yeah, I'll just kind of cap that off with more details on Alaric. He is when you look at over the cap, when you look at a player in specific and look at his contract details, they'll tell you what they were actually paid for the year, and then what they'll do is they'll generally give you a valuation for that year, and they'll kind of say, well, if you kind of redid it based on their performance, this is kind of what their value would be. So even though he was paid closer to like 5 million base, 4 to 5 million off his rookie salary, his valuation was at 13.5 million for this past season based on his play. But then in addition to that, I've also seen where people have said, well, his value on the open market could be between 16 to 18 million. So I think the number of 18 million on average per season for Alaric, I think would be good value. I think that would be slightly below league average. And based on his performance, it would certainly be worth it, especially with the Rams having more cap space. I just don't see any negatives to it myself.
Yeah, and we were pretty upset when I was suspended for the first two games, but now that may hurt his value a little bit. It should. I don't know if it will. I mean, teams get crazy when it comes to draft free agency time, especially left tackles. Man, there's 3 or 4 positions that are critical for an NFL team's success, and left tackle is definitely one of them. So,
Yeah.
Alaric Jackson picked a good year to have a standout performance. That's for sure. He was pretty
Yes.
solid. Okay, what position
Correct.
next? We have, we can real quickly talk about tight end if you want, and really it's about Hunter Long.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made the argument, and I just guessing here, but if I'm Hunter Long, I'm looking for opportunities elsewhere, and hopefully there will be some for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Rams. The only variable that we may not be aware of is how the Rams feel about Tyler Higbee, his durability, his availability, and are they could potentially move off from Tyler Higbee this year as well. But I don't know. So there's some unknowns there when we're talking about Hunter Long. How do you feel about Hunter Long?
My opinion on him has changed. I used to think he was just one of the guys, just average. But doing a little bit more background work, I'm finding that he was probably the best blocking tight end on the squad based on his grades from PFF. Um, he had a blocking grade of what is it here? Run blocking, just about 69. I think that's highest on the team as far as run blocking. So I'd have to say that that based on that and his age, he would be a value to keep, to re-sign based on his
Yeah, and
ability.
yeah, and I guess okay, that's fair enough. Now I wonder the other part of it is does he want to come back to the Rams if he has interest elsewhere? He's just not. If I'm Hunter Long, I'm telling myself I want an opportunity to, I want to be on the field more. I want more offensive snaps. So there's that part of it. But who knows
Yeah.
what Hunter Long's thinking? He could just be dying to come back to the Rams as well. And
Mm-hmm.
again, the thing we don't know about is Tyler Higbee and how the Rams feel about him, and how they feel about, the they need a solid tight end with, when Tyler Higbee does move along. And I don't know if he's on the roster. So again, that
Mm-hmm.
gets into the draft. Do they draft a tight end? If they're planning on drafting a tight end, is it to replace Tyler Higbee, or is it because Hunter Long's moving on? So a lot of moving parts there. So
Mm-hmm.
wide receiver, we have a few guys to deal with. We got Tutu Atwell, Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Who would be your priority to bring back?
I think Demarcus Robinson at his age, I think um, he still has the skill set to separate on a consistent basis, and I think that's what McVay likes about him. So um, at his age, I would want to keep him, but it's got to be for the right price. So if a team is willing to pay him what you'd consider league average, I don't know. I'd have to really look at that hard. I'd probably want to bring him back for an under league average,
Yeah,
or
and
like a home team
so
discount type of thing.
it's kind of a package deal then. So we have to consider all the wide receivers as a group. Would that mean a no to Tutu Atwell then?
Tutu Atwell, I would prefer to keep him based on the fact that his market value is probably not going to be that high due to his usage in the offense. But I have to say that when he runs like a 15 to 18 yard out route, and he gets the cornerback running in a bail situation that he needs to just get on his horse and start running with him, he can just lower his hips, come to a stop immediately, and proceed to the out portion of the route. And I haven't seen any cornerback that's within 10 yards of him when he runs that route. So I just hope that I hope they can re-sign him and start utilizing him in that way more often, because I think he would be a great value. They could sign him for pretty low. I don't have his numbers here, but I'm sure you could sign him for 4 to 5 million, and it would still be pretty cheap.
So what your thought is then to bring the guys back? And I had been thinking that with Cooper Kupp going out the door, and we haven't talked about Tyler Johnson yet. The Rams might have to draft 2 wide receivers, let alone 1, just to get this group going again, or sign an external free agent. But if we were to bring Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson back, I still feel like we need to add somebody to that group. And then there's Tyler Johnson. How do you feel about Tyler Johnson?
I'm a little bit stronger on him. I would have to say I would feel more. I'm okay with Demarcus Robinson going, but I would push strong to keep Johnson and Atwell.
Okay.
So that the need is, I don't want him to go wide receiver heavy in the draft. I think we'll talk about it in the next part of the possible free agency. Yeah.
Yeah, but generally, I guess the takeaway is what if I'm understanding what you're saying, priority should be to bring some of these guys back, lessen the need to draft a wide receiver. Or they're still going to draft a wide receiver, I think.
Yeah.
And then maybe if we can't bring one of them back, then we got to go find a veteran. Maybe. Let's see. How do you feel about bringing Jimmy G back? And again, a lot of that may depend on Matthew Stafford situation, or maybe it doesn't. Even if Stafford comes, let's just propose that Matthew Stafford comes back for this discussion. Do you want Jimmy G back?
Good question. If there wasn't, it's hard to say. There's a couple of good quarterbacks in the draft that I would really like to see them draft, and then keep that young quarterback as the backup, and not keep Jimmy G. But because free agency comes before the draft, it's kind of a conundrum. What do you do? I would be more leaning towards keeping him. I think he's a good backup for this team at this time. So,
yeah, and the one thing you could do is, you don't have to sign these guys right at the get go. They're if there's not going to be a strong market for Jimmy G, and maybe there won't be, you wait till after the draft, early in the summer, and bring him in. And yeah, the way I feel about Jimmy G is this. A lot of people aren't big fans of him. I know a lot of 49er fans aren't big fans of Jimmy G. Supposedly they'd be licking their chops to see, Jimmy G quarterbacking the Rams. But hey, he's won at the NFL level, and he's won a lot, and he performed really well. He had his one chance in that final game against the Seahawks. I'd be okay. Now, I don't, if we have Stafford as our number 1 quarterback, and if the goal is to get to the Super Bowl, is one of these rookies going to be good enough to get it done, or would you rather have Jimmy G in the house? And
Hmm.
I'd rather have Jimmy G. But the problem is that he could eat up $10 million of your cap space too, right? Maybe he'll
Yeah.
come in with a little bit less this year, so
Hmm.
that's the problem. And running back, I think we're pretty good in a good situation at running back. Anything we need to discuss there? Not at all, right?
Um, no, I can't remember if Ronnie Rivers is still under contract, I
I
think.
believe he's a restricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken. The Royce Freeman, obviously they signed him late in the year. That was just an emergency, an
Hmm.
emergency hire, we could call it. Yeah. So let's move over to the defense,
Sure.
and probably a good place to start would be Bobby Brown and Neville Gallimore.
Hmm.
Are two of our big bodies in the middle of that defense.
Hmm.
And how do you feel about those two gentlemen?
I like Gallimore as a backup. If he can be kept at a close to the league minimum, I would do it. I'm not going to give him a huge increase in pay, um, because his number of snaps will still be very minor compared to the starters. Bobby Brown would be more of a more serious question. Um, I think with seeing his play, I'm kind of the one that has always been a little bit soured on the play that I see on TV from him. But some of the statistics say otherwise. Because I think when the Rams go to a 3-4, I always want to see somebody in the middle that can really be stout and take on blocks and not get moved around. And it seems like he gets moved around all the time. Allowing the opponent's guards to get out and take out our linebackers in the run game. But then I look some of the stats on PFF, and his run grade is pretty decent, average to slightly above average. So kind of in a pickle with him. I'm not too sure I want to give him market value to stay. I would let another team sign him to big dollars and replace him.
Yeah, I've always felt that you can get guys like that in the fourth, sixth round, and there's some
Mm-hmm.
free agents. Maybe we'll talk about a couple later on. So yeah, bring him back if it's at the right price. I'm kind of with you on that. But we do need some. We do need to find some guys to play in the middle there. That's for sure. Both those
Yeah.
guys free agents. So maybe we'll bring one back and draft another one. There's some guys in the open market that we know can get the job done. Not we don't need to bring in a superstar. We don't need to bring in an all pro player. Just
Mm-hmm.
a serviceable nose tackle type run
Yes.
stopper. Let's see. Oh,
Yeah.
and by the way, Ronnie Rivers is a restricted free agent.
Okay.
So I suspect they'll bring him back, and if they do, they'll be okay at the running back position. Okay, so edge rusher, we're pretty set there depth wise. Now Michael Hoyt, he's turned into a fan favorite, right? And love the way he plays. They finally figured out how to use him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm betting you want to bring Hoyt back. Am I right?
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah, it's got to be right for the right price. um, I should have looked at his numbers. He was somebody I didn't even think about, but
Oh, that's
yeah,
fine.
I think as a rotational outside linebacker, defensive end, I think he's worth keeping on the roster just due to his leadership. I think he's a good leader on the field. I think he's great in special teams, so he is worth keeping. I just don't want to be paying him, 50% more than what he was making the last 2 seasons. I don't know if that would be worth.
Yeah, and the Rams have a lot of flexibility there as far as personnel.
Mm-hmm.
They have some leverage there because they don't necessarily need him, but I suspect that they want him because the reasons you pointed out, leadership. I think he's a very emotional player.
Mm-hmm.
I think he gets his teammates pumped up. He gets the fan base pumped up, and he's just a
Hmm.
good guy to have on your roster. So, and I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to draw a lot of interest from other teams as far as, hey, this is the guy we got to go get. He's a little bit of a
Exactly.
supplemental, he's a supplemental player. Um, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's a very good player, but he's not going to be a guy that's, going to rack up 70, 80 tackles from the outside linebacker
Yeah.
position or anywhere else.
How about
So
our how about our guy Kier Thomas?
now, Keir Thomas is, I think he was, is he one of the guys they signed to a futures contract?
I think so. I think I'm going to
Yeah.
take a look at him really quick.
I think
Um,
he's on a futures contract, if I'm not mistaken. So he should be back. Um, I don't know the ins and outs of the futures contract situation. Um, but I know it allows teams to expand that roster without, breaking the salary cap limit.
yeah, so it looks
Um,
like he is under contract for 2025 for the 1,030,000. What is his salary cap for the next season? So we're set there. I think he's an up and coming player that I would like to see on the roster.
Yeah, and Nick Hampton too. He got hurt late in the year, but he's another guy that's a really good special
Hmm.
teams player. So we're pretty deep there. I would predict that they might not draft any edge rushers in this draft. They can
Yeah,
take a
they,
year off from the edge rusher position.
exactly. And the last thought I would have on that, I mean, Brennan Jackson, who we drafted out of Washington State, I was very high on. I think I only saw him in on like a couple of plays on one or two games. I mean, I think he got hardly any snaps.
Yeah,
Defensive.
he was. Yeah, he was on the 53 the whole year, and he was inactive almost every game.
Yeah.
He did play in that finale against Seattle and at least one other game. So
Mhm.
hey, I'm not sure what's up with him. He could end up being a very good player, but he's probably the one. It was an incredibly good draft, but he's the one guy that the jury is still out on for sure.
Yeah, he was one that I think Paul Wally and I were very excited when the Rams drafted him.
Yeah, right. One guy we forgot along the defensive front is Laurel Murchison.
Uh-huh.
Would you like to see them bring him back? He was hurt twice this year, but
Hmm.
when he's played, we really haven't seen him play any amount of time since the 2023 season. But he was a
Uh,
decent rotational defensive lineman.
yeah, I have an idea on that. They would kind of roll into draft talk. So I don't know whether to spend any time on that
Okay, we
right
can
now or
wait.
not.
All right, let's go straight to the inside linebacker position.
Hmm.
And really, I hate to say this, it seems so
Hmm.
mean, and I don't like to throw shade on Rams players, but we won't discuss Troy Reader, but let's discuss Christian Roseboom.
Okay.
Another guy that's a bit of a team leader in a quiet way, and he's played some solid football. He has some shortcomings, obviously, and that's a position. You know, Omar Spates. He seems like he's a serviceable inside linebacker.
Hmm.
Do you see the Rams trying to upgrade that position or bring Christian Roseboom back?
That's a hard question. I think Rams management, I think, finally realized near the end of the year that the lack of athleticism and the lack of what we call side to side mobility was definitely glaring, in the games against the Eagles. I got a gut feeling that they're probably going to try to sign somebody in free agency and draft somebody. Not very high, of course. We know they don't value the position, so it's not going to be a linebacker they're going to draft high. But I see them hopefully upgrading the position by getting somebody who's a little bit faster, has a little bit more side to side mobility. One of the things we we can test that by is the three cone drill and the that they test for at the combine. That's what I look for. Um, Guys that have a good score in the three cone generally can move laterally very well. And I can just remember those games where Troy Reader trying to defend a halfback with the ball on a screen pass in the flat and just being juked to the ground because he just can't move.
You've heard the rumors
Met.
about, again, we'll talk about free agency,
Yeah.
external free agents in a moment, but there is a rumor that the Rams are going to make a run at the Eagles linebacker Zach Bond. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. We'll cover that
Okay,
in the.
so I guess what you're saying is Christian Roseboom, not too excited about bringing him back.
No, I think when you look at the grades for them, like Rosaboom and Reader are kind of graded about the same. They're when you look at PFF grades, they're down in the 50s as far as run defense. That's below average. Um, Spates was rated a little bit higher than them, but Spates again, he's great if the play is right in front of him and he can plug a hole in the line to stop a running back. But like on those runs that from the Eagles, what's his name?
Barkley?
Barkley, when he would bounce runs outside, Spates was nowhere to be found. So Spates is kind of in that same basket of not being able to have that lateral quickness
Yeah.
to get to the sideline. So with that said, I'm not really excited about keeping Reader or Rosaboom. I think they can be upgraded. So
Okay. Fair enough. And Jake Hummel, by the way, is a restricted free agent. So I suspect, I just assume restricted free agents will be back in most cases. And
yeah.
he's a good special teams guy. Now, the entire second, pardon?
I was just going to make a note about the restricted if people are concerned about salary cap. Generally, when you talk about the restricted players, they're so far down the list of the dollar amount they get paid per year. The salary cap only counts the top 51 contracts. So it's easy just to sign the guys that are restricted, sign them to a contract, bring them into training camp, then you can decide what to do because they're really not going to be affecting your salary cap.
So in the entire secondary, I feel like there's only, there's two guys to talk about really. And they're two guys that the Rams brought on really late last year, John Johnson and Akilla Witherspoon. Now, the Rams cornerback group, I've been saying over and over again, I think it's a good group. It's just lacking pizzazz. It's lacking that elite corner. Akilla Witherspoon might have been our best cornerback last year. We get Darion Kendrick back, Trey Tomlinson. I'm not sure how much of an impact he's going to be. So I'm a big believer that we need to, we got to quit just adding good players to that cornerback group. We got to find a difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Akilla Witherspoon. I don't know where Witherspoon falls in that pecking order, but how do you feel about bringing Witherspoon back?
I'm pretty big on bringing him back. I think his length really showed in some games late in the season where he's able to tip balls away, balls that are, if completed, are huge plays, 30 to 40-yard plays. I've seen him at training camp. He's a good teacher with the younger guys. I wouldn't mind, giving him 6 to 8 million for a season or two to stay on.
And I've seen one of the Rams content makers suggested that Darius Williams is a guy the Rams could cut and take a dead cap hit in the process because he is under contract. And that maybe that would be the ideal situation. Bring Witherspoon back, move on from Darius and draft a cornerback high, but just a thought. And the other one is John Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry?
I was going to add on to that, but go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to John Johnson, but go ahead. You wanted to add something about the cornerback group?
Talking about Darius Williams. I think due to his age, I think it would be best to do a post June 1st cut. You'd save $5 million on the cap. And I think you said there will be dead money. Can't remember what the dollar amount is. I think it's 2.5 to 3 million dead money.
Okay. And the post June 1st, if I'm not mistaken, that just allows you to spread it out over the following year as well, though, right? You still get the same dead cap hit. You just spread it over 2 years.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So yeah, the Rams have some decisions to make with that group, but I feel like the safety group is really strong. John Johnson, I don't know what the thought is on him. He was hurt for much of the year.
Mhm.
And I feel like John Johnson's a guy that the Rams will just see how the draft goes and then maybe give him a phone call and say, John, we need you back again.
Mhm.
And I'd be okay with that. How about you?
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm really happy with the youth movement, with Curl bringing his experience to that room. With I think he's still under 28 years old. So I
Yeah.
like the youth. So again, I'm with you. I'd like to bring Johnson back in case they go into training camp and somebody goes down with an injury, and he's available to bring in on a lower value contract to get you through the season.
Yeah. I mean, you got McCullough, Kinchins, and Curl and Quentin Lake. That's a pretty solid group.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have. I think I get where you're coming from on all of these players, and let's talk about free agents, external free agents. Again, got about 40. We got about 50 million to spend. If we bring back Lyric Jackson and some of these other guys, that could easily eat up half of it, if not more.
Hmm.
Uh, um, so maybe we got 20 million to spend, something like that. Maybe there'll be some restructuring of some other players. Um, I don't know who else would be eligible for a restructure. Maybe someone like Rob Havenstein. If you look at the
Hmm.
contracts here, the cap hits. Before I take this down here, Jonah Jackson's another guy they could potentially
Hmm.
move off of. Um,
Yeah. I
but
think
the
before we get into the exact players, I had some thoughts on that. Um, if we know that the Rams are
Okay,
going to trade Cup and or possibly cut him if there is no trade, um, if they cut Cup, before June, just a normal during the free agency period when the league year starts, they would save 12.5 million of cap space right there. I think anybody on the offensive line that I would restructure, I'd probably do Kevin Dotson since he's a little bit younger and he's going to be here a little bit longer than Havenstein. I would probably restructure him, and that would save about 7.5 million. Havenstein, because he's near the end of maybe of his career, I'd probably leave him as is. He's only 11 million hit against the cap. I think that's fine. I think Colby Parkinson you could cut and save 5 million, and Darius Williams cut would save five. So, considering all those, I mean, you've gained almost another 38 million in space to
yeah.
go on top of the 50. So, I think they're going to be sitting pretty good as far as cap space.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. They're two additions on the offense, Jonah Jackson and Colby Parkinson. Uh, didn't really work out. I mean, Parkinson he could change our mind. If the
Mm-hmm.
Rams roll with him as one of their top two tight ends next year, and Jonah Jackson could end up being a very expensive swing guard center, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll have some decisions to make there. On the defensive side, I think the Cameron Curl signing was pretty decent, especially considering his contracts. Pretty team friendly, right?
It is. I agreed.
Yeah. And the secondary, I forgot about Emmanuel Forbes. It'd be interesting to see if he can contribute next year. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they have him on that calf raise machine.
Oh,
Build some muscle on those calves for that man.
yeah. He looks, man, he was a string bean, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, so what? There's some external free agents that you like for the Rams that you'd like them to make a run at.
Yeah, not too many. I think on the start with the defense, I think if you were to look at middle linebacker, there's not a whole lot available, but a couple of players that would be interesting. There would be Eric Wilson from Green Bay. He's just turned 31. His average pay per year was 1.4 million. So he could probably be had at pretty low cap number. His grades from PFF are not a whole lot better than our existing players, but they're slightly better. He's about 67 against the run and 60 in coverage. There's a player from the Raiders, Divine Diablo, age 27. His average per year was 1.3. Again, similar grades. He's probably not a whole lot better. Pretty good against the pass. Two more. Neville Hewitt from the Texans. He's 32, but covering the pass, he has like a grade of 78. Very, very good, which I think we need somebody next to Omar Spates who's proficient in pass coverage as opposed to the run. I like that. Now, the last one, as you were speaking about Zach Bond from the Eagles, he's the bee's knees right now, right? Everybody's talking about him as being great. What I like is his teammate who filled in when who's the Trotter, they're starting the other linebacker.
Jeremy Trotter.
Yeah, when they
Right.
brought in Oren Burks, who's a free agent from the 49ers. He stepped in and was just awesome. His numbers, I mean, he was graded out at 78 against the run and 82 against the pass. And he was only at 1.2 million, and his valuation for the year is at 2.3. So to me, I think he would be a better value over Bond.
So all four of these guys sound like they're not necessarily big splash moves. They're efficient moves to bring in guys that are a slight improvement over what we have now. Spend your money elsewhere, maybe. Are you buying the Zach Bond rumors?
I'm not sure. He's such a hot commodity. I really don't see the Rams getting involved in that, since how low they value the position. Where Oren Burks, he would be a lot cheaper and would be kind of an under the radar signing, so to speak.
Yeah, it's so difficult this time of year. I mean, there are 10 articles a day of headers that suggest a free agency signing is imminent. And the way they're very good at writing the headlines to get you to click on it. And it's just some kid in his basement, is proposing a free agent signing or a trade. Now, but the Zach Bond one, though, I thought came from a credible source. I don't remember where I saw that, but yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt right now. And you know what? I think there's a lot of politics and gamesmanship going on. If the Rams are interested in Oren Burks, they might circulate that they're interested in Zach Bond, right? It could play into their hands a little bit. So, okay. What's your next free agent you like?
No defensive lineman. I really couldn't find any myself that I thought would be any improvement over what we already have. I think cornerbacks, is where we can go next.
Okay.
Of course, top of the list, we already spoke about it. Witherspoon, he was somebody I would really like to keep.
Okay.
There's two others that I think that would be a good value. That would be Christian Fulton from the Chargers. He's 27. His salary average per year recently is 3.1 million. His valuation is 4, so it's pretty similar. He could be signed for under 5 million a year. He's graded a bit higher in PFF than most of our cornerbacks. The one I like the best would be Mike Jackson from Carolina. He's originally drafted by the Seahawks, if people remember. He played a couple seasons there, and he was traded to the Panthers. And he's 28 years old. He's a free agent this year. He only had a 1.2 million average per year salary, but his valuation, because of the way he played, he's up at 7.9 million. So he would be somebody you'd probably have to sign to the 8 to 10 million a year. But I really like his play. With the Rams playing more I'd have to say more press man coverage due to the fact they're blitzing more now. Um, I think he would fit perfect in the scheme.
Okay. Any other cornerbacks?
That's it as far as
Yeah,
cornerbacks.
I had to go back and it just occurred to me you talked about defensive line and and I talk about sometimes I talk about players only because I know about them. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of players I'm not that, informed upon, but there's two ex-Rams out there that are available, Greg Gaines and Sebastian Joseph Day. Yeah,
Right.
neither of them excites you.
Mm, I think
I thought you were a Greg Gaines fan.
I is. You went to my high school,
Yeah.
and then went to Washington. I like him. I just don't think at 314 pounds he's. I'm looking for somebody in the 330 to 340 range to play that nose tackle.
Okay.
So, if the Rams couldn't find that and wanted to bring him back, I'm okay with that. If
Yeah.
that's the best they can find.
Yeah, and there's a couple of big boys in the draft
Hmm.
that fit that bill for sure.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that another day, though. Um,
sure.
let's see. So now the cornerback position, these guys you're talking about, you can see them. Most of them, I should have asked you as you went through them, as they're capable of playing CB1, CB2, being on the outside and man to man, getting the job
Hmm.
done. Okay.
Yes.
So you could see,
Yeah.
if I'm understanding where you're going with this, then one of these guys paired up with a Killer Witherspoon with Kobe Durant on the inside, something like that.
Hmm.
Would that be your
And and again with somebody that we draft, I think they're
right?
going to draft a cornerback in the top 100 this year. So combined with
Yeah,
that and a new draftee, I think they would have a solid four man room that would be pretty formidable.
yeah. I'm thinking wide receiver, cornerback with that number 26 pick. Now
Mhm.
that could they could move around a little bit, but that's my thought on that.
Mhm.
I could be completely wrong, but
Yeah.
um, okay. So want to jump over to the offense, or is there any other defensive groups you want to talk about? Is that it? We're not signing any edge rushers, right?
No, no. I saw an article about what's one of the brothers, one of the Bosa brothers from Chargers. They
Oh,
said might become available, and I just kind of, I kind of chuckled and said, "No, I don't think the Rams would be going for that."
yeah, and I don't think they'll be trading for Miles Garrett. If they were, it's a few years ago, it seems like that was their MO, right? To go get guys like that. I just don't think the current vibe of this team with the young edge rushers they have, I don't know, it
Mhm.
just doesn't make sense. Um, okay. Want to jump over to the offense then?
Yes, offense. Um, let's see if there's any. I really didn't find any offensive tackles that I think would be of any value other than a young player from the Steelers named Dan Moore. He played left tackle. I think he may have been playing for somebody who was injured. He played 90% of their snaps. Um, his valuation is about 7 million per year, and his grading per PFF is probably slightly below Rob Havenstein. So um, I don't think he would be an upgrade over Alaric Jackson if you needed to play him at left tackle, but he would be somebody that you could go get to be a fill-in if let's say
Now,
you lost
so
one of
which side
that.
did he play on for the Steelers, though?
I'm pretty sure he played
Oh,
left
okay.
offensive tackle. Reason being, I know that I haven't watched film on him, but on Over the Cap, he's listed as a left offensive tackle, not a
Oh,
right.
okay.
So, but he's the only one I could find that could be a fill-in if you were to lose Alaric Jackson. He'd be somebody that'd come in and be almost as good. Be could be a fill-in until they draft somebody that can play
Yeah.
full time.
I don't see them making a move on the interior offensive line. I could see them bringing in a wide receiver. There's a bunch of veteran wide receivers
Mm-hmm.
on the free agent market. Do any of them excite you?
Um, yes. However, I did have a final thought on the offensive line. If I could go
Oh, I'm
back,
sorry. I got ahead of you again. Go ahead.
that's okay. This isn't really regarding free agency, but basic performance of the offensive line. I kind of did some research on, you know, pass protection. Stafford was, under some duress in certain games near the end of the season. And I went back and I looked at Bo Limmer. And as much as Rams fans their perception is that, oh, the offensive line played so well this year, so much better than before. I think the perception is there, but when you look at how he performed versus the pass protection, boy, his grade it's not very good. It's
Yeah, I did see that where he was grading out really good as in run blocking, but
mhm,
not so much in pass blocking, and that's pretty
yeah,
important when you have a 37-year-old quarterback back there, especially that it
yeah,
doesn't have a ton of mobility.
yeah. Because of that, I was looking at free agent centers, and there just really isn't. There really isn't any available in free agency this year. That would be
Well,
enough.
there's a chance that Jonah Jackson could get his act together and beat out Bo Limmer. Um,
That
you
could
know,
be because wasn't it when they in training camp in 2024 when they attempted to use Avila and
right,
Jackson as center and left guard in tandem. Something wasn't going well, but then I think Jonah Jackson got injured before they could even uh,
right.
work that out. So I don't know if they're going to try that again going into training camp or into OTAs this year. It would be interesting to see because I would have no problem keeping Jackson if you can have Jackson and Avila either or guard and left.
Right. Yeah, I just feel like Ram fans shouldn't give up on Jonah Jackson just yet.
Okay.
Um, but just my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, so the veteran wide receivers,
Yes.
I say it
Uh,
seemed like your ears perked up when I said that. You got someone in mind.
I found it interesting that when you look at the Commanders, just about their whole wide receiver room are free agents. So
Oh, really?
you got Noah Brown, you've got Olamide Zacchaeus, and Diami Brown. They're all free agents. And boy, I would if you saw how open Zacchaeus gets in every game, it's like amazing. He's a little bit he's closer to Tutu Atwell in size, so I'm not excited
Yeah.
about that. But Diami Brown is the one who I'm really excited about because 4 years ago I mocked him to the Rams in a couple of my mock
Yeah.
drafts, and
Right.
he really can separate on long routes. Um, and even if you look up you go to YouTube and you look up his highlights, even with the Commanders, I mean, most of his highlights are him running just 9 go routes and beating the defender and catching the ball 40, 35 to 50 yards downfield. So he's somebody I really like. Noah Brown has that prototypical size the Rams like, that Puka and Cooper are in the
Six
six
six one
two.
two oh eight.
Yeah. Yeah. Noah is 6'2", 215. So
Oh, a little
he
bit
can
bigger.
play on
Yeah.
the outside. He's still 29. His valuation is just 3.3 million. So most of those three receivers are all, in the 2 to 4 million range. So you give them an upgrade in pay going into their second contract, and you're still going to be way under budget. So those are just three examples that just popped out. There's probably more, but I think if the Rams were to get another player to in the draft, let's say to fill in for Cooper Kupp that can play that slot role, that big slot, having the build for doing a lot of the dirty work. I think Diami Brown will be perfect to use as that deep threat. Just play him on the outside and let him stretch the field.
Yeah, Diami Brown was a guy I remember being interested him in whatever year's draft that was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so hey, there's a guy out there that looks like you could get an LA discount on, and I've always loved him. I just don't
Mm-hmm.
know if he's a good fit for this offense. I think he's a good fit for any offense, really. That's Keenan Allen. He
Mm-hmm.
wants to come back and play for either. He's came out and said it. I want to play in LA. I'm playing for the Chargers or Rams if one of them will have me. Basically, is
Mm-hmm.
what he said. If the price was right, why not? Right?
If the price was right, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
mean,
how
he's
I don't know how he fills in with the formations and the position groupings that McVay likes to use. I'm sure he could put him to work, make use of
yeah.
it. But I don't know. We kind of know that Whittington and Nakua, you can put him in any one of the slot positions close to the line of scrimmage. You can play them outside. You can throw them screens. They can block really well.
Right.
I just don't know where you would put Keenan Allen. Is he going to line up as the X on the outside all the time and but
Right.
not have the speed to stretch the field? I don't know. It's a question mark to me. I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Whittington when we were talking about wide receivers earlier. He's going to
Mhm.
be have a really big role, and I'm a big fan of his. I think
Yeah,
he could be a guy that really steps up this year and has a big year. Really could.
yeah.
And I'm sure that's the plan. That's got to be McVay's plan when you're talking about, moving on from Cooper Cup. You must feel really comfortable about Jordan Whittington, is my thought on
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, the only thing with Whittington is I hope he can take. We knew that Puka was forced into the position of having to play full time and um, get the ball, be a major percentage of the offense, and he showed that he could be strong and take
Yeah.
on the workload. Whittington, I think we have to put him through that and see if he can withstand the same thing that Nakua did.
Yeah.
So I have my fingers crossed with that. I
Yeah.
would still like to bring somebody in to keep Whittington's. I would like to gradually bring up his number of targets per game slowly because
Yeah.
he's a physical player.
And he's a great special teams player too. Made
Exactly.
plays all over the field.
Hmm.
Okay. That's good stuff, and it's going to be fun. I think as we get closer to March 12th, I think is the date. I'll start putting together what the Rams roster is shaping up to be, and then and that will lead into more sensible mock drafts. Knowing
Hmm.
how some of that falls out. It's going to be that second week of March is always crazy. Um, and Rams are going to make. I don't think they're going to make tons of moves. They may make moves like you're suggesting, kind of like
Hmm.
under the radar, guys that maybe some of us haven't heard of that are going to come in and play some good football for us, and maybe
Hmm.
one big signing. We'll have to see. Any final words?
Mm, no, I'd have to say that it's nice that the Rams are going to have some cap space. They have the room to make moves if they need to. Um, I think they're in a great position. I think the news about Matthew Stafford being shopped to other teams is just. I don't think a lot of fans understand what that means. It just means that they're both the player and his agent and the team. They're testing the market to see who's willing to pay X amount of dollars per season for him. If there was a
Yeah,
trade, doesn't mean
yeah,
the
and
Rams
they're
intend to trade him. They just want to
right.
find out what that dollar value is.
Yeah,
So,
I think they both need to learn what is the fair market value. Although
mhm,
I think it's also fair to say it's possible they could move on from him. It's possible. I
mhm,
think I don't know, I'd probably put it in like an 80-20, 80% chance he's going to be back with the Rams, if not more. But I think it's
mhm,
possible this could, kind of fall apart for Stafford and the Rams. It's possible. I certainly hope not. But
yeah.
I know some folks have been telling me, I think suggesting, hey, let's get off this story, dismiss it, move on. But I think it's worth talking about. It's worth
Yeah,
talking about.
I think the only possibility is if one of the teams in the top five of the draft are willing to part ways with that top five draft pick and get
Yeah,
some way. And the Giants have already said no, adamantly no. So
right.
uh,
Yeah, I thought it.
that
Yeah, that could be
1-100.
true. Yeah, it's hard to figure out how much teams. It's there's draft value charts
Mhm,
available, but when you start throwing in franchise Super Bowl winning quarterbacks
mhm,
into the trade mix, everything goes askew. Okay,
right.
Scott, man, good stuff. Thanks a lot, and I'll get you back on here either for a roundtable or a mock draft. I'm thinking about doing a live mock draft, and I may do that this week,
Mhm,
um, where I'll run it and I'll let people in the chat room suggest picks. We did that once before. It was a lot of fun. I'll make
great.
sure you're around to chime in on that.
Sounds great.
Okay, Scott, thanks a lot. out here from Rams Up.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya.